Hello, everyone, and welcome to first episode of a weird little experiment we're doing. Let's talk something that isn't Broncos. We're talking some Primal. It's a amazing show that Cal and I have become a big fan of, or big fans of in recent years. And joining me is Cal, a member of the Denver Broncos community. He's a moderator on the Denver Broncos Reddit,
Ooh.
and okay, never mind. We'll re-record. I didn't know that was secret.
No, I think it's funny. Keep going.
Shoot,
It's just
Cal.
like the first thing to describe me as a moderator on the Denver Broncos subreddit.
Well,
I want to
how
clip that and
Broncos people know
specifically
you.
send it to the subreddit. I want them all to know this is how I'm known. This is
Yeah,
me.
it's your honorific.
I'm the head mod, actually. I'm in charge. And everyone has to do what I say, and they bitch and moan, but they still do it.
Yeah, and I think that's why we love you. You're a bit of a chaotic member of the Denver Broncos community. You have your spot here, and you're also a very, I don't know, well articulated, well thought. I'm gonna set the bar high for you here before we start. Member of the Broncos community when it comes to discussing, I think, TV shows, films, and whatnot. And so I think a couple years back, I stumbled across Primal. I recommended it to you. I don't recommend many shows to you because I know, again, you've got a high bar and you ended up liking it. So few people know about this show and enjoy it. I think it's a show we both recommend. And so we wanted to check it out. But what are just your general overall shot or thoughts on the show? Primal.
I think Primal is maybe one of the highest achievements of like pure animation in a broad mainstream sense that we've ever achieved. Uh, I'm including myself in the achievement, but that has ever happened. It's like astounding on every single level, except maybe some plotting. But as an animation and all the things that are entailed with animation, being like motion, sound design, all of these kinds of things, I think it is like a masterpiece, and it should be more well respected. I'm not. I don't know how exactly big it was, how popular it was. You just said it was not respected enough or not watched enough, and that sucks.
Yeah, and I guess when I say that, I mean I think by the general, clearly it's doing well. They're bringing back a third season. For people that don't know, I should probably introduce the show a little better. Primal is a on Adult Swim. It can also be found on HBO's streaming service. You can find it around the internet. It follows Spear, a caveman who crosses paths with Fang, a dinosaur, and they obviously this is kind of like a fantastical, ancient, prehistoric realm. And they try and survive together. That's kind of the basic premise. And it, to Cal's point, it's an amazing, I think, achievement with what they pull off with the animation. I think you can talk about the technical aspects a lot more than I can. But what always, whenever I am trying to sell the show to someone, I mention how it is completely dialogue free, and yet it couldn't hook you in anymore. Like you feel the emotions of the characters. You're talking about how you're looking at one of the scenes now where one of them's in a precarious situation, having to watch the other. I just watched that episode myself, and it's like when those things are happening, you feel the anguish or like kind of the sorrow of what these characters have gone through, and they do it all without speaking a word the entire show. And I think that's up until season 2, there's some of it, but I thought that's such an impressive aspect of it.
Yeah, to I guess give a very brief spoiler free summation of it is you should watch it, and that's the only real thing I can say without
like
spoilers. You should definitely watch it if you can handle two things. One is visceral brutality. It is an insanely brutal show. There is gore. There is just blood and guts. There is fear characters, and both like the protagonists and like their adversaries like are depicted as showing fear in a very, very harrowing way. And so if like you can't handle I don't know, if you can't handle media where a dog dies, then maybe not for you. And the second is it can get emotionally devastating.
Yes.
There are portions of the show. There are portions of the show that go on. It's just kind of like a pulpy Robert E. Howard, Conan the Barbarian style, like romp through blood and gore. Um, Caveman smash, dinosaur tear up.
Chomp. Yeah.
Yeah, dinosaur chomp. And like that's fun. And if the gore is fine with you, but that there are portions where it's going to linger. It's going to sit for maybe an entire episode, going like, can you handle what is about to be taken from you?
Yeah.
And
Well,
there are people who go who are just like don't have the sensibility to do that. There are people who have gone through trauma that probably don't need to see that kind of stuff. And I have, as much as I love the show, I have told people not to watch it before.
yeah.
Because of that. But if those are things you can handle, I think the overall product is going to maybe make you a better person. I'm sorry.
It's good. I like it.
I don't know. I really didn't want to burp at the end of my emotional sentiment, but I did. Yeah, that's as far as spoiler free. Like, go watch it if you can handle those two things. Go watch it. It's a masterclass of animation, moment to moment emotional storytelling. It is both gut wrenching, and like joy inducing.
Yeah,
and I don't like. There's nothing specific I can talk about without spoilers. And to be perfectly honest, like I'm not one of those people who think like spoilers are evil. I don't know. There's this whole subset of people on the internet who think that like if you think spoilers matter, then you are donkey brained. I don't know. I've watched also Always Sunny recently, so that's what's coming up.
Yeah.
But like I do think there's a joy in discovery through non-spoiler thing. There's a way of like letting a story unfold, even if it's predictable. That is like good. I like it. I don't like when people spoil things, especially if people don't want to be spoiled, I think you should let them have that.
There's a rational middle ground. There's a rational middle ground where I think you can preserve media for yourself or want to have that preserved while also like being reasonable.
Yeah, if the entire story is ruined for you because you know beforehand, then maybe like introspect a little bit. That is stupid, but but like there's just I like seeing things unfold in front of me, and I like experiencing things for the first time, even if it's going to be a twist that can never be experienced the same way again. I do enjoy it. To be fair, though, there isn't much in this story that is like unpredictable.
No, and I think you hit on that. The plot is kind of the weaker aspect. Sorry, continue.
It's super bare bones, and there is a tendency for I'm not sure the actual definition of this anymore, but like plot armor seems to be a real big thing. But here's the thing, Zach, it doesn't fucking matter. There's one thing the show does, and it does it in the first episode, and it establishes fully, concretely, the relationship between Spear, the Neanderthal-coded caveman, and Fang, the little T-Rex thing.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, it really doesn't matter like how much liberty they take with how much damage they can take, how much like it's very clear there's certain points like halfway through a series a character gets really like terminally injured and then in the next episode they become fine, and that's okay. You know it's going to happen. The tension of like, is this character going to make it, shouldn't really be in your head, because the meta of there's 5 more episodes in this season and I don't think they're going to get rid of a main character. It's like it shouldn't be there, but because they established that connection so early and so thoroughly, it's not about whether or not that tension of are they going to make it is there. It's how the other character responds to it and how they spend an entire episode agonizing over whether they don't know or not they're going to make it. We know. Yeah. We're always going to know. It's the main character. They're not going to die halfway through the first season, especially now that we know there's 2 seasons.
Yeah.
But watching one character like dwell on it is devastating, and it is worth every second of like the false tension of, are they going to make it?
And I think that's a pretty perfect pitch. We will get into spoilers here in a second, so everyone go check out the show. Kind of like Cal said, there's maybe some heavier aspects where if that's not really your jam, it might not be the show for you. But I think it can appeal to so many things. Like if you are just like, I don't know, I originally watched it like in college with friends, like hanging out and just like throwing it on and enjoying kind of the more Conan the Barbarian-esque romps. I think you can watch it from more of an analytical perspective. I think as we'll be diving into, I think you can enjoy it as like a great, you talked about how if a dog dying in media is hard for you, this might not be the show for you. Like, yes, it's a caveman and a dinosaur, but it's very much that classic human story of like man and dog going on or man and pet, some sort of animal of some sort going on an adventure together, and the relationship between those two. And I think that's I don't know, the strongest aspect of the show. So with that said, let's get into
town? Are we in spoilers now? Everyone, this is your fair fucking warning. Okay, we're gonna spoil the shit out of this show. And I really like I said, I don't think this is a show where like knowing what happens beforehand.
No, it's
not necessarily so going to ruin. There's not like twists or stuff, which in and of itself is a spoiler. But I do think going through and being in the moment, which knowing what happens might affect it. Like knowing exactly specifically what happens might affect it. But this is a show which grips you very quickly in every single episode, and it holds your attention. And if you have that little like memory in the back of your head going like, this is going to happen next, and you're just waiting for that plot point to emerge, I do think it takes something away. And so I do very much encourage, even though it's not a highly complex plotted show, to go in as blind as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think you want to enjoy that. So I imagine most of the people listening now are people that have already enjoyed it for themselves. I think this is going to be very loose formatted. Again, this is the first time we're doing something like this in the LTV brand. So hopefully you all like this. Let us know what you think. But Cal has some Primal takes. I want him to kind of go through them and we'll bounce it off. But earlier, I want to follow up on something you said earlier. This is why Bree's normally the host. But you said you think it's one of the pinnacles of human achievement in animation. Why specifically do you believe that?
I think it's not like a groundbreaking show in the animation department. I don't think there's nothing like, I don't think there's anything where you haven't seen something like this happen before, at least in like small chunks or individual aspects of it. But I think it is the height of like traditional Western style animation. It's Genndy Tartakovsky, who like very much clearly loves that old Tex Avery, like very old Steamboat Willie kind of animation. He likes his squash and stretch. He likes his like bouncy characters. And we've seen this, like he did Dexter's Laboratory, he did Samurai Jack, he did the like weird mini series of Clone Wars between the Star Wars movies. I just had to wonder if you were alive during those. I think you were.
I
was.
But it I remember them. Yeah.
You remember the Genndy Tartakovsky 5-minute?
I didn't watch them, but I remember the little cardboard cutouts and like the.
This is like 2002. Video. Were you? Damn.
It was 3 or something.
It bugs me that I had to wonder that. But like he's a very traditional. He loves traditional animation, and he takes that to, I think, its height. He takes it to the limits of where it can go, and it's an absolutely astounding show. It utilizes things like it doesn't do blurry depth of field. It just layers things differently and reduces the detail. It like you can see the weight of ink. I don't know if this is like a feature they're using in whatever art program they're using, or if they actually were animating with pens or pencils. I know he didn't animate them personally. It was a French organization, but he is, the creative driving force. He is the aesthetic. And so like watching it with these lines that sound like these outlines that don't even sometimes connect, these sometimes janky animation where it's like stilted, but it's stilted on purpose, and it revels in these things. It revels in its limitations as like cell animation. I'm assuming, man, if it's not, I'm gonna feel real weird. But yeah, I just can't imagine something being better than this in a very traditional, very Tex Avery, very Steamboat Willie kind of way. And it's gorgeous. It's lush. It's every frame is full of something. The camera work is incredibly cinematic. And yet it's incredibly nostalgic because it harkens back to those old kinds of animation, those old styles, those old aesthetics. And so it's mixing this beautiful animation that lets you know it's animation. It's not trying to go like that. We're trying to be hyper realistic. We're reveling in the animation style. We're reveling in the jankiness that's necessary for cell animation.
And it's done so beautifully. Just really quick, there's a couple moments in the first few episodes where, like, the episode 2, they have the lightning scene where the flood comes with the snakes, and it's starting to get shocked underwater. And there's these awesome, like, still shots when the lightning crashes.
It utilizes both, like, it goes through, like, character design, and then, like, silhouette, and then, like, negative effects of those silhouettes and everything. I'm sorry, everybody, I'm a little drunk. So like even when it needs to be still, which it doesn't, because by all accounts, like even just looking at it, they didn't seem to have very many limitations on what they were capable of doing budget wise or time wise. It looked like they were given enough time, enough money to do whatever they want, and they still elected to do certain things in like still shot because they wanted to emphasize, like you said, those lightning strikes in those brief like half-second frames. You see like a dinosaur underwater being attacked by snakes, and then you'll see the silhouette of a dinosaur underwater attacked by snakes, and then you'll see just like a white screen, and all those things happen rapidly. And it's going like, what can we do with this animation? What can we do with the stiltedness? And it's like you could watch it. You could watch it. You could watch it 6 seats back on an airplane from the back of somebody else's seat and still go like, this is engrossing.
Yes.
And that's not to speak of the sound design. I'm sorry. Go on with your
No, but you're right. And we'll get into the sound design, but so perfectly put, because obviously they tell the story in audibly in ways that are other than the dialogue, but it being a dialogue-free show and the animation being so great, it really is the rare type of media that I think you could, and you're not going to get the full experience, but I think you could really like actually enjoy if the person, the seat in front of you across the way diagonally on the plane's watching it and your computer dies on you or something. But yeah, just on the visuals, you mentioned how they lean into the fact it's animation. It's not hyper realism or something like that. And one thing I had noted that stood out to me there was in the mammoth episode, the size difference between like Fang and the mammoths isn't
cried so much.
Big,
I cried so much at that mammoth episode.
You talk about the devastating one. That one's brutal.
Yeah, not
one
to tangent
lingers
so far. I hope you continue on with whatever you're saying, but the mammoth one was really what sold me. It was just episode 3.
3, yep.
3, yeah. Episode 3, it was like I'm willing to go to war for this show. But
and it's you're fine. We can dive into that. But yeah, it's such a somber episode, and really good. They do again just the animation. There's a bit where like they get separated in the blizzard, and like how they depict the visual of like it slowly kind of or I forget which one's losing which, but I think it's Spear or Fang rather being a little too fast and like slowly walking out of the range of Spear's vision, and like kind of the way they build that fear and tension in that moment's good. But in terms of the realism point, I think they find shelter in this cave, and they show the man that's kind of gathering around this mound, this cave that Fang and Spear, and the size difference isn't that dramatic. But then when it shows from Fang and Spear's perspective, and they come out of the cave, and now all of a sudden they have these mammoths towering over them. They really are towering over them. It looks like they're several stories above them. I don't know, just what you're saying, evident or communicating just through visual storytelling how much or how imposing this herd of mammoths is on the protagonists.
This, as again, I don't want to aside and tangent all the things, but I do just love to gush over this show. This is for people who've seen the show. Hopefully, all of you motherfuckers at this point into the podcast.
Yeah. Pause the podcast, watch the show, and come back and finish the pod.
At the very least, watch to the third episode at this point. But like, this is there are very few instances. There's only 20 episodes to this show, and there's probably like, what would you say, 3 or 4 times where there is an obstacle in which Spear and Fang cannot overcome it on their own. Because they're very resourceful. A big portion of the show is, and they even have a music cue for it, is they're incredibly smart. Spear and Fang are incredibly resourceful, incredibly smart, especially Spear. And they can, given enough time, given enough opportunity, given enough luck, they can eventually overcome any kind of thing within the 20 episodes. But there are 3 or 4 times where it's just like, eventually just being big is going to work. Being bigger than these two, being able to out endurance these two is going to figure it out. There's no amount of ingenuity that they can come up with. And with the mammoths, it's one when they're approached by the large herd of mammoths seeking revenge. Kind of. It's a weird dynamic. It's a very beautiful dynamic of like the episode is there's a herd of mammoths. They're all stuck in this snowy area, and there's an elderly mammoth who is like clearly decrepit and falls behind, and Spear and Fang take the opportunity to kill it and use both its meat for food and its hide for warmth. And eventually the mammoth herd find out that that's what happened and seek revenge or retribution. And they find Spear and Fang and they attack them. And at this point we're going, are they going to be able to get out of this mammoth situation? And the resolution to this isn't that they defeat them. It's that they offer up the bones of the dead mammoth. Because the old mammoth, or the mammoth tribe, just wanted the opportunity to bury their dead. They didn't want to fight. They would fight, and they were going to win that fight. But they really just wanted to hold some kind of reverence to those left behind. And Spear acknowledged this. I don't know how much Fang did, because Fang is a dinosaur. But Spear noticed this. Spear figured it out. Spear offered up the tusk.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the resolution. They didn't defeat them. They didn't, out-engineer them. They offered up what they wanted. And what they wanted was just a moment to grieve. Yeah. And it's this is why I cried. This is why the tears came in the third episode, and this is why I was hooked fundamentally. And I was like, no matter what this show does, I owe it. I am in a debt to this show for what it's done to me just in episode 3.
Yeah, and the way you frame that I thought was so well too, and it's the way the show frames it as well. But for the longest time, you think that what these mammoths are looking for is retribution. Again, it's a dialogue-free show. It's not like the mammoths are like, "Oh, we got to get this tusk back." It's all visual.
No Ray Romano's here.
Yeah,
no Queen Latifah's. No Ray Romano's.
No Ray Romano's. Is
only
perfect.
Frank Welker grunts, baby.
Exactly that. But so it seems like, and I think especially when you factor in the first 2 episodes, the expectation is like violence and gore and something visceral, and it's gonna be this monster of the week, or the bad of the week, and it zags hard in a really emotional and tender direction. I think they stick the landing absolutely beautiful, and then the the very next episode, it's right back to the kind of Conan the Barbarian.
Oh yeah, it's the
hijinks with terror under
spider. It's just like there's blood-eating bats and a spider that commands them, and they have to beat it with rocks. And it's wonderful. It's awesome. I loved watching it, and it was almost a cathartic release because if they had another
Yes.
episode that was like half as dramatically intense as the mammoth episode, I don't think I could have gone on. Like I would have, out of emotional like security, had to stop watching the show. And I think I told you this because you did tell me to watch the show, and I was watching the show on your recommendation. After the episode 3, like I took days to watch the
Yeah.
next episode. Like I needed to process. I wasn't fully prepared. I knew it was going to be something because Samurai Jack from Gendy Tartakovsky has a lot of like very cinematic emotional moments, but like it is a show you can kind of roll through if you need to or if you want to. So I was kind of expecting like a lot of viscera because it's Adult Swim. He's got a license to do it now. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it, and I think it was like, man, maybe nearly a week of me just like I can't go on before I fully process what happened with these damn mammoths, where these hairy elephants came up and like ripped apart my soul.
Well, and that one's not even the most. I mean, we can talk about the different aspects of the show. If we're talking about just the kind of heavy emotional side of it, I think the best example of that is the Red Mist. That's similar. Well, really combines, I think, both of what we talked about in last two, like kind of the insane violence and almost silly violence, like in terms of how over the top it can be, from episode 4 of the series, and kind of the more emotional, tender bits from or hard to watch bits from the Mammoth episode. And I think they really combine in the Red Mist, which is the Viking episode. Or it might even be that is the Viking episode, and
That's this kind of the second part to the Viking, right? Or was there only one episode?
It might be the second part, yeah, because there's also the Dawn of Man, but that whole I guess the part, and it's hard because they're a little justified in it, because the Vikings are slavers and they're not good people, but
they're not just slavers. They enslaved a specific person too.
Yes, they're slavers who've captured Spear's love interest, and a red mist rolls into the town, which sets up some really interesting, pretty animation as they're wiping out the entire town, but it is brutal.
As an animation thing, it is the exact same effect or style or whatever as when Spear watched his family get eaten.
Yes,
it is a red gradient that goes from like the top of the screen down to the bottom, and it's mist, and it's just like these grayish silhouettes, and then it shows blood.
The blood like leaking, and the way they do blood.
I'm pretty sure there's a chainsaw man somewhere in my vicinity.
Oh shoot! Well, fortunately, it's not coming over the mic. But be safe. I don't want you to get Texas Chainsaw Massacre live on camera.
If it's a chainsaw man, I'll widen the frame and you'll get to watch like an example of
the extreme viscera.
But yeah, no, that moment. So the slaver thing is basically like at the end of season 1. A woman is introduced to the duo, and
Mira,
and they both eventually take to her super well, and she is recaptured by what is obviously like Vikings who have enslaved her, and she escaped before, but they've come back and grabbed her, and now they've crossed the sea in one of the most beautiful displays of animation ever, and that's sea crossing, the first episode of season 1. I'm sorry.
That's an amazing one. That's an amazing one too, and you feel like
they fight a megalodon, and it feels like, yeah, of course they would defeat the megalodon while on a little raft under a turtle shell. But so they get to the Viking thing, and they're trying to. I mean, their concern is mostly to free Mira, but there's lots of slaves, and they eventually free the slaves. But because of the resistance the Viking community shows them, they're like, okay, well, we're taking you all out. And a red mist rolls in, and they take them all out indiscriminately and brutally. They kill children. They kill everyone they possibly can, basically leaving the chieftain and his son. But in the scene where it's killing him, like I said, it mirrors animation wise the ways in which Spear's family initially were killed by the dinosaurs in the first episode. And it rolls back into Spear's head. What do I do now? Like, well, what I do now is become as primal as possible. Nothing can make it out of here. I need to go as visceral as possible because they've done so much harm.
Yeah.
And it's not even self-defense at this point. They could easily slip away because the big advantage is every one of them is a Viking. And so they can't tell the difference unless they see Fang. They can't tell the difference between like Spear and a regular other Viking because it's shrouded in mist. But Spear can just basically take out any human shape he wants.
Yep.
And he does. And he does hard. And we, as you said, they're slavers. These are morally like awful. They're like evil. These are evil people. They went out of their way to recollect a slave. They didn't need to. They didn't need to go to get Mira. So they're very evil people. But in these moments, you see like Fang and Spear kill children. You see like the final moments between mothers and sons as like this very human part of them emerges in their death. And it's as much as you're like they're slavers. They are slavers. They're slavers. And you're watching a mother hold her son while she dies, like bitten in half, or while he dies, like bitten in half because a dinosaur ate him. And it's like, oh no, do I feel a little bad for slavers?
Well, how they do it is so great too, because it's not just like the red mist rolls in and the switch is flipped, and now all of a sudden you're meant to sympathize with the slavers and the others are depicted as monsters. Like that's a huge part of it. But they'll also flip back and forth where there's moments where the Vikings start to overwhelm Fang and Spear a little bit. And Fang and Spear, I think, even like start to retreat. And eventually are cornered and realize like, shoot, we can't retreat. We have to kill all of them. Like, so there is this back and forth where it is an ambiguous situation. Like these slavers are extremely evil. They do have it coming to them. The people they've captured deserve to be free. And it is also exactly what you said. You're seeing women and children get torn apart. So I think that's between that was a fairly convincing argument for why it's such just we got to get into the sound design and everything, but what are some of your other takes? I totally sidetracked us. What are some of these takes here? We can
takes about the show. So in that moment, I do think the Red Mist is a like prime example of that, and the Rage of the Ape-Men episode are the like plot armor is ridiculous in this show. Like the main characters are going to survive no matter what. Until a moment.
But you do feel the impact of what happens to Fang in Rage of the Ape-Man. Yes, you don't worry about him living, but you do feel like the crunch of his bones and like, ooh, that it feels different. You can feel the damage being inflicted on him.
Like I said earlier, like we know that these characters are going to survive. We know these characters are going to make it through. Just the meta information of there are more episodes, right?
Yes.
But watching in the Red Mist episode where like how many arrows can any like there's a certain point of like Viking arrows any dinosaur should eventually collapse to. There's a certain amount of damage any like Neanderthalic caveman should be able to take before he collapses. But they don't, because that's not the point of that scene. The point of the scene is not that they are invulnerable. The point of the scene is that they're gonna get you. And in the scene you were talking about from the first episode where the ape men, like that giant ape takes the weird black elixir and becomes like a rage monster and like seemingly breaks Fang's fucking leg and like smashes her around until Spear can drink all of the elixir as opposed to the single drop that the ape took and just eviscerate the entire community of ape men.
And
Like,
and
you have to,
when you say eviscerate, you mean
it's
eviscerate. That is one of the more gruesome scenes of the show. It is.
it's like they're indulging in it. There's a scene, there's a very
Yes.
funny, it's almost humorous to a point, because there's the one part where like it shows Spear like grab the entire skull of one of the ape men, and it lingers on that shot for like 2 seconds as the ape man knows exactly what's happened, and then it crushes it and the eyes explode. Whatever. Like, it's fully indulging. And that's fun for me. I love violence. Who doesn't love like really well done violence in media? But I mean, a lot of people, but I like it. But
Yeah, that's for some of us.
we know like Fang is over there dying. I'm sorry, Kate, the chainsaw man.
You're fine. I get it.
But like, no, I'm concerned. I don't care if you can hear it. I know that I can hear it. But we know like that. We know that Fang is eventually going to take that breath that is denied Spear for so long while he's standing over her. We know it's going to happen. We know they're going to eventually heal because there's more episodes of the show, because that's the premise of the show, is their relationship. But that's it. Their relationship, as established in episode fucking 1, is like, I don't care what things are obviously going to happen. I care that Fang is, or Spear is so upset. I care that Fang becomes alarmed when she can't immediately figure out where Spear is or what state Spear is in. And that happens in the Red Mist as well, when they're like taking all this damage, but they seem to be unaffected by it. And it's like, no, they have this unspoken, like almost eyes rolled back in their head, almost calmly eviscerating this entire community of Vikings. And it's because they have been, or they feel they've been wronged, and they understand each other that they've been wronged in this way. And they know that this is where Mira is. And they know that these are the people stopping them from getting to Mira. And so, as much as like even Spear has a moment where he does not like that he killed a kid, he keeps going.
Yeah.
And it's devastating, and it's great. It's beautiful. It's really harrowing, and more things need to be like this.
Agreed. So what? Give me another one of your hot takes here, Cal.
Hot take. I don't think this is so much a hot take. This seems to be the conclusion is, or the finale seems to be pretty contentious, or if not like contentious.
Yeah.
There seems to be,
hate it, but it was
there seems to be like the positive, the way I've seen it defended positively seems to be almost apologetics, and not like, no, this is good. I don't understand why anybody likes it. Like, everybody kind of understands that the ending, the first half of that final episode is amazing. It's the flashback to Spear being a little kid and his like maybe like fully Neanderthalic dad. Because his dad has more, like way more bestial in the ways that we see
and
when
it's
Spear,
the eyes.
The eyes, like when Spear goes fully into rage mode, we see that kind of like monstrous, that kind of like more ape-like, more bestial form come out visually. But in the flashback, his father was always like that. And when the saber-toothed tigers attacked his clan, that like it went even further into that, and he had to watch his father die, but die like taking out 4 or 5 cats. And he eventually went like, oh, I can use the rock. He's more ingenuitive than his own father, but he still needs that rage to get the ingenuity to work. But that's the first half of the episode. I think it's brilliant. I almost wish it kind of just ended with the flashback. Like, the flashback was the final thing that happened. The final thing that happened is the revenant of the Viking chieftain who had his entire tribe decimated by Spear and Fang, and then had his son die by the hands of Spear and Fang, made a deal with Loki, some kind of revenge Norse god, and becomes like this flaming 20-foot tall revenant thing, and eventually catches up to them. And Spear and Fang, not wanting the new community they've been adopted to be burned to crisp, fight it. Spear goes into a full-on like, I have to go all out to defend this because this is a supernatural being. I don't know if he fully defeats the thing. It's unclear based on like what kind of deal the Viking made with the revenge god. But like he stops him from advancing and sustains like fatal injuries. And then there's a
And
weird
now we gotta have
there's a weird scene that involves like, can you have sex with a burn victim hours after the burns?
Yeah, and severe burns.
Even if they like indicated earlier via cave paintings that maybe this is something they would have wanted, it's very.
But why don't you just set it up before he's burned to death? Like it feels like they were like, it felt like they were writing it as they were filming it almost.
This is
and then they were like, well, we have to continue into season 3, but we just killed off our protagonist. What do we do? They have a baby. It's just like, why didn't you set that up 2 episodes earlier? And then there wouldn't be the issue.
Yeah, this is the plotting thing. It feels like they didn't know how to end it. They wanted to have a specific emotional beat when it ended, and they maybe achieved that. But it's really weird to have a moment where you go like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this sexual encounter with a man who's barely conscious and suffering from burn wounds. Just so you can have like a flash forward to depict their daughter with the children of Fang. Also, Fang was very absent from the final moments. It seemed like a moment between Spear and Mira, and I know Spear is like it's Spear and Fang. They're Deuteronomist or whatever the fucking word is, but it has been Spear. It is Spear's story. But Fang was the second main character, and Fang literally ran out of the room and never came back.
Yeah.
That's one of my problems. But here's like, I think that's everyone's kind of take. I've searched around to see if anyone can change my mind about how weird I felt about the finale. And the finale, I don't think was so bad that it affects anything else. Like I feel like it's just. Oh, okay. It's very neutral. It doesn't retroactively make anything worse. I'm not going to, if I ever rewatch it, I'm not going to rewatch it like dreading the finale to come. So there's that. Take solace in that, loyal listeners who have definitely watched the show. My other hot take, though, I'm curious if I don't actually know what your take on this is. I have a favorite episode.
Oh, are you going to go with the one that a lot of people don't like?
I think I am. The Primal theory.
Interesting. So I was going to follow up and ask how you felt about that.
So while I was watching the Primal
Why
theory,
is it your favorite? Give us the
so first, the Primal theory exists in the order of the show between the Red Mist and the subsequent confrontation between chieftain and his son and Fang and Spear, right?
Yes, it's a break episode.
It breaks them. And the thing about the Primal theory, which everyone knows about because everyone who is listening to this has seen up to this point, is a dialogue heavy flash forward to like the 1890s or something where they have like weird analogs for a bunch of scientists, including Charles Darwin. It's not Charles Darwin, but it's like an analog for him. Yes. Where an insane criminal escapes.
Aristocratic British explorers.
Yeah. It's a bunch of pompous fucking dudes with big sideburns. And they're discussing like evolution, and the Charles Darwin analog is like, I think everyone has the primal drive, and if their life is truly threatened, they will go into a primal state. You know, it's a show. It's describing.
Yeah.
And then like an insane criminal who has like, I don't remember fully. I haven't seen it since I watched it initially because it is season 2 is up and down. But like, does he have like a Baphomet tattoo with death literally printed on his abdomen or something like that? He's like got yellow eyes and like jagged teeth, and he breaks into their house, and he's like,
he looks almost like Fang, or not Fang, Spear. He almost looks like Spear.
He's like one by one, like taking out all of these like snooty academic Oxford old men to where it gets down to the last 2, and eventually like the host of the party and the Darwin analog get to a
The
point where they
host
have
who
to
made
like,
fun of the
the host who
analogy.
made fun of it, like he goes from like he tries to use a gun, it doesn't work. He tries to use a sword, it doesn't work. He gets down to a spear. He's like boxing this evil guy who lives again, literally has death tattooed on his stomach. And he goes into a what we'll call a primal state, a fully like eyes rolled back into your head, kind of like I'm releasing every base instinct of myself in order to survive this confrontation, and eventually wins through like stabbing him with a spear. And then there's a joke I could take or leave at the end where the Darwin analog goes like, "I told you so." Um,
Yeah.
but in the context of the show, I don't think this as an episode on its own would have done much for me. But in the
Mhm.
context of the show, in a, as you said before, dialogue less show, to like break it up and like really, I don't know, maybe I'm not a fan of like clever subtlety anymore. But like it's basically hammering the premise of the show into you.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, this like diatribe, this hard left into a new thing, into the kind of animation that it was, or into the kind of like dialogue heavy animation it was, into this like prim and proper. We're no longer in a jungle, we're in like a dusty old mansion. Um,
Mhm.
and seeing it like devolve into this old mutton chopped man like stabbing an evil criminal in the face with a spear, like for whatever reason that like, okay, I didn't think I needed the show to explain the premise I was already aware of, but I did really like the reinforcement. I did really like how out of left field it felt. And I
Yeah.
have gotten in actual fights with people over this.
Well, it's extremely controversial. It's not my favorite, and it's
Do you even
interesting
like
that
it? Do you like it at all? Do you think it's because I'm in
I
the
didn't
minority?
dislike it. I didn't. It was one where I watched it, and I was watching through weekly, like as they were airing, and it was one where I immediately rushed to the Primal threat Reddit because I was just curious, like, ooh, this one's gonna have some discourse about it, and I didn't. I don't feel as passionately on either end. I'm not as big a fan of it as you are.
No
I
one
tend to
is.
like some of
I don't think anyone
the
is.
I
I don't
tend
think
to
Andy. I am the only person who would say it's my favorite episode of Primal.
and I get the kind of liking the hammering it in. Like I really like Wilshire off the latest Tyler the Creator album, which isn't like a very melodic song, but I like how it's just like here I'm laying it all out for you. Like here is the story of the album, and I'm going through every detail. It's not even really a song. I'm just going to tell you an 8-minute story right now. And I can see kind of what you're talking about there. It perfectly captures what they're trying to say in the show, and in those aspects, it's really strong. I don't know. I just it didn't hook me as much as some did. I don't really have great reasons for it, but I do think at that point I was so sucked into and I get why they can put the break in there too, but it's interesting to me, I guess, that it within the context of the show was a big positive for you, because I almost think that's maybe the negative for me, is that it is such a hard right turn at such a climactic moment in the story.
Yeah,
Um,
the Red Mist episode, which precedes it, was my favorite episode. When I
yeah, it's
watched it,
right
I
there.
went, "This is the best episode of the show." And then the Primal Theory came on, and I was so taken aback. Like the I'm sorry because of the rum, but the
You're fine. All good.
adot. Please say the word for me. Audacity.
Atrocity.
Not atrocity.
Audacity. Audacity.
Audacity. That fucking soft A. The
You're fine.
audacity of them to go like, you know what? Here's an episode not in a jungle, not even starring the main characters who are the entire show. Here's here's a dialogue heavy, snooty rich guy tangent that's going to hammer in quite unsubtly the premise of the show. And like the gall, the absolute gall of them to do that led me to so much respect at the moment. And like in I was watching it going like, I don't know exactly how to feel about this, to the point where when I finished watching it, I like waited a couple hours and then I watched it again. But no, I think this is great.
Yeah. And it does feel, I think the whole show as a positive feels that way. Like it feels like a very successful animator working on a passion project and being able to like having enough credit to his name that he can, try and cash any check he wants. And I think 9 out of 10 times in the show, he's pretty successful. Sometimes I think, like we mentioned a few times, there's maybe a plot element here or there that's like a little, you look a little cockeyed at, but it's
three part Colossus ancient Egypt colonization plot.
Yeah, that was not the best,
It's
but
not long, but
the rest, like the 20, the 17, I guess, episodes that preceded are great. I think my favorite episodes jumped out. Red Mist is right up there. But I also love in season 1, back to back 7 and 8. Just as like 7's so fun. It's like their kind of take on a
seven's the zombie one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is
Can we talk
like,
about that for a second? I know you're going on a thing, but
crazy visceral, and yeah,
that's the moment. That's the only like true moment in the show, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Spear is genuinely afraid for himself. Like he's plenty afraid for like Mira and Fang and Fang's babies later on. But this is like he has a nightmare of his own hands dissolving, of being bitten by the thing. And I think it's because he's very smart. I would consider Fang, or I would consider Spear. I would consider them both very smart. But like for what he's working with, what mental capacity, he's working with, what resources he's working with, like Spear is a genius. Spear is a fucking genius.
Which is a credit to the writers. It's way easier to further the plot with stupid characters doing they did something stupid, and so the plot progresses, as opposed to, I think, a really smart character where it's like, God, how do we work this guy into a corner?
Every time that like Joel Valentine and I just lost the Marilyn Manson guitar guy who Tyler Bates does the music. Like there's that music they do every time he's like working something out. It's like like he picks up a rope and he picks up like a hollowed out shell of a dinosaur insect, and is like his eyebrows raised and he goes and something's about to happen. But in that one, like he knew he couldn't touch it. He knew this was a thing he couldn't beat to death with a rock if ultimately that was what it came from, or what it came to. And like that notion brought him genuine fear. And the fact that they went over the top and made that fucking dinosaur like emerge from lava 4 times to go, and Spear is just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? And he feels genuine fear, not just for the circumstances, but for himself. And I don't think that's a fear he feels at any point else in the series. He feels fear for other people, but he doesn't feel fear for like, I don't know how to deal with this. Because he's the first episode, it shows him like contemplating suicide up to the point where he's like standing over a ledge and he sees his family in the sun and he decides not to. But like Spear is ultimately fine with dying. He's okay if something bests him. So to have a moment where this like virus infected or some kind of thing is in this giant dinosaur that's just like chasing them, and they can't touch it, they can't beat it with rocks, they can't do anything but run.
And the gore in this one is also amazing. Comical, it opens almost. Right with comical, but but how they have like the flesh falling off this thing and like bones protruding out of it as like the skin kind of sags and like this decomposes off of it, I think is so cool. It's beautiful. It is a little comic, but it is or then how the dinosaur first gets infected and starts attacking its herd, and just like that scene's incredibly violent and visceral and kind of sad as well. And then following it up with episode 8, or no, let's continue on 7.
That's the scene where they come across all of the, I don't know, dinosaurs, the long necks, that
Yeah.
the the adult Littlefoots,
Sauropods, whatever. I think
sauropods
that's what they are.
that have all just been destroyed by this infected one, and like the eggs smashed and everything, and like Spears clearly looking over this and going like, did something want to eat this? Because they left all the bodies, they left all the eggs, and he's like clearly a little confused, like what purpose? Which is a big distinction, I think, from season 1 to season 2. Is season 1 is like nature. Even when you get to like the weird druidic witches, they seem to be part of nature. This seems to be like nature is brutal. Nature is a giant meat grinder that shoves squirrels in and produces like starving wolves still. Like it's this awful thing, and it's beautiful and it's visceral and it's destructive. And so him seeing this, like, this seems wasteful almost, and it like took him aback. He's walking around this massacre of sauropods and doesn't fully understand, like, why would anything do this? Why would anything not eat the meat? Why would anything leave the bodies here? And so season 2 goes on.
And what could do this?
Yeah, what
to
could
this
is
many
also, yeah, good point.
sauropods? And it's like, I mean, you see, just to capture this, just in case some people, again, watch the show, please.
Watch the show, assholes.
One of the sauropods jumps on another one's, the infected one jumps on another one's back and like forces its spine and rib cage through its chest. Like
it's fun. It's
gruesome
comical.
Scene. It's comical, but it is gruesome.
When the infection is first introduced in the sauropod, it's because it's like meandering over to a watering hole and then like projectile vomits blood into the water as like hard as it possibly could, like 3 or 4 times. And it's to the point where you're like, this is a joke. This has to be a joke, but it's not. And it takes it seriously. It's never condescending. And that's something I love about Genndy Tartakovsky in general. Through Dexter, through Samurai Jack, through this, his new show on Adult Swim, shout out Genndy Tartakovsky's new show on Adult Swim.
I'll have to watch that.
It's called like Unicorn something. It's about like a trio of eternal superheroes that keep being reborn or something like that.
I'll watch it. Hell yeah.
But he's never treated animation as anything other than like a standard medium. He's never gone like, this is for kids. No, Samurai Jack is for kids. It can be, because I think kids are smarter and more well-rounded in general than people give them credit for. But he didn't make it for kids. He made it because it was dope. Yeah. He made Primal because it was dope. He's making his new show, I assume, based on historical precedent, because it's dope. And so even when things are projectile vomiting infected blood into a watering hole, and you go like, this is verging on humor, you go like, it's never speaking down. It's never speaking down to its audience. It's never expecting like an age group. And I love him for that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that's a great note to end it on. We've been going for about an hour, but I don't want to rob you short of any of your other hot takes. So
okay, I've got some hot takes. I can run through. Okay, so going through this like makes me think of art and the ways we interact with art and what art is in general. And Zach, do you have yourself a personal working definition of what art is?
Wow, that's a really heavy one. I think it's tough because I grew up, my whole family on my mom's side's artists, and I was like, I'm never going to be an artist. I'm bad at this stuff. And then I ended up writing, which is kind of in the arts. Man, I'd say something humans create for a non-utilitarian purpose. Like it can also have a use, but and this is probably not a great definition. You could probably pull a Diogenes on me and show up with a
naked chicken,
naked chicken or whatever, and rub it in my face. But yeah, something humans create for, or not even humans, because what animals create or whatever, but something created for a purpose beyond its utility or function. Something created to be enjoyed.
I really like that definition. I disagree on at least one thing about it, but I do generally, I think that's a good one. I do think it is. I do think it's pretty dependent on humanity.
Yeah, the animals aren't really doing that. I'd be fine.
And if like we get to a point where like crows or dolphins can exist within this personhood that we should probably consider giving them, or octopi or octopuses. I'm sorry, linguists. Octopuses. Where these things exhibit enough like self-awareness or tool usage or whatever that we can like lump them into personhood. Maybe that can be a thing. But at that point, I think what you mean by humanity, it would necessarily include some of those things. So I do like your definition that it's human and it's beyond utility. And that is very nice. I think that it's very hard to define it because definitions are really, really stupid to begin with. All things are tautological.
Yes.
All things are eventually going to be because we said they were, because that's the most categorically like convenient way to describe it.
Yes.
So when I think of like defining art, I do like to like avoid hard Webster-esque definitions, and I do want to go like I really like that thing where you said about it's beyond utility, but it's communicative. I think it involves both human ego and communication, and those things are absolutely necessary. And in that framework, if that working definition appeals to anybody or resonates with anybody, it means that AI can't make fucking art. And Andy Tartakovsky can. Because like I don't know what people I understand there's aesthetic niceness. You see a nice thing and you go like, "Ooh, that's pretty." But I can also like see, I don't know, a fucking sunset over the ocean or something and go like, "That's pretty," but it didn't have any human interaction. It's not communicating any like inner ego workings. It's not something that reality can't fully comprehend, but the ego is trying to like exude outward. And so when I see these motherfuckers go like, look at AI, and everyone goes, look how pretty. Specifically the blue check marks that are prioritized in the fucking report.
Yeah.
I go like, so your idea of art was just a pretty thing, and it wasn't a human involvement. And I don't know about these people. Maybe like, well, I'm saying that to like cover something that I don't feel like needs to be covered. I think they're maybe evil at this point. But but if you came to me right now after all of this like hour-long gushing of Primal, that in fact an entire AI organizational structure created it. It was done by prompts and it was done by artificial intelligence, I would not like it. Because the fact that humans worked on it and the fact that humans appeared to work on it is what makes art good to me. Like, I don't like you can replicate the same sound. You could make a beautiful song and then like replicate it entirely and tell me like an AI did this. Like, I don't care.
I guess where I disagree is if it feels to me like a human made it, like if I still felt those human elements in the show, if I could still get like those touchstone emotional moments, to me, I'd still qualify it as art. Now, I agree with what you're saying in the sense that I don't think we're at the place now where like Chat GPT can create an artistic script, because I know there's a little like writer's strike going on, and that's a talking point there. Like, I don't think we're at the point where these AI are able to create something like Primal. I feel like, and I don't know enough about AI to really have this conversation intelligently, I feel like there's a possibility somewhere off in the future where AI becomes sentient enough that
once it becomes sentient,
form of emotion. Yeah.
If you include sentience, if you give it sentience, I will grant it humanity. I will grant it personhood, and I will accept everything it does as the output of a person. But that is a hypothetical I don't think we'll ever achieve, nor do I want to achieve it. And
they're kind of a Rube Goldberg device. I got not really, but it's like
not even that. A Rube Goldberg
just putting the pieces. But I mean, like, it's someone's pushing a button, and a lot of complex things are happening behind the scenes, but it's not putting together a story in the way a person would. Like, if I told you to tell me your story of your day, it doesn't understand narrative structure. What it's doing is it's looking at the internet, in a way, our collective human conscious, and then just grabbing things that make sense based on the prompt and kind of like mashing them together. and coming up with a basic average and sorting through it, where, you know, like it's more of a collage than like a
Yeah,
unique creation.
that's fine because, like I said, sunsets are pretty. Things can be
And I
pretty
agree with
outside of
you. I'm not
artistic thing.
debating.
But if I found out, like I said, Primal was entirely created by artificial intelligence, like my opinion of it would go away because it's not just an aesthetic thing that I'm after. I'm after a connection. I'm after a communication from a person or a team of people or something like that. That's what it's not just pretty colors, pretty smooth motion make my brain go boo. It's that I want to know that there's people. I want to know that
Interesting.
some kind of, not necessarily turmoil, but some kind of like hardship, even if it's just drawing the same fucking dinosaur over and over. I want to know that that's what's going into it. I want to know that a human did it. And
So
like like right now I've got a lamp next to me and a 7-Up bottle on it, and I really like the way that the red tint of the lamp is reflecting inward through the green bottle. I think that's pretty. I think it's very pretty, but I don't think it's art. I
yeah,
think I think it's coincidence. I think it's happenstance. And there's
well
nothing
put.
communicated. There's no ego here. There's no person who's gone through a litany of things or even just one thing and is trying to communicate the ways in which they feel about that thing in things that aren't direct, like speaking. I want communication. And communication, to have communication, you have to have another light bulb in somebody else's head.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand. And I think this is, hopefully it's not AI, but I think Primal is, you know, it's a ton of people involved, animators, directors, all of these people, and they're all pouring something into it. And that thing that came out was emotionally both devastating and joyous, uplifting and crushing, and all of these things that like encompasses a lot of human spirit. And it's a very basic, simple, two people have a connection and they go through things together kind of story. And the fact that humans did it makes it worthwhile to me. And I'm glad to think that robots didn't do it.
Yeah, it's extremely human, like tying into Primal and all that. It's like base humanity. I think it does so many things well. I cannot gush enough about this show. I accidentally enabled my Siri on my computer, so hopefully that didn't mess up the recording there. Cal, what is the next hot take, or do you have any others for us?
I don't think
If not, that's fine. I'm not trying to force you into them.
Well, here's a brief one. I don't think you'll respond. I think you'll giggle and that'll be it. I really loved seeing that. I really loved seeing Fang's vagina. I really liked seeing Fang give birth to those 3 eggs. I thought that was like you weren't.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Indy, you weren't afraid of anything. You showed me a full-on dilated dinosaur vagina,
Yeah.
and also in that moment, Spear like felt elation beyond anything we'd ever seen in the show, and he had to even be calmed because he thought Fang was in trauma, but Mira was like, no, she's doing it right. Like, be chill, be cool. And
Yeah.
like he watched it, and he like all of the joy, all of the elation of like a father watching their children be born, and like his partner, or like, you know, they're not romantic partners. I want to make that very clear. There is never a point where it feels romantic or sexual between the man and the dinosaur, but
No,
it did
it's
seem like watching like a paternal figure watching as this birth took place. And to show the birth, they did absolutely show an egg come out of a dinosaur vagina, and I thought it was great. I'm glad they were brave enough to show me.
I agree. I think, and that's maybe I'll tie this into an end thought here. It's the show cares. Like it'll show the insane gorilla, show the dinosaur leaping out of lava 4 times, and it'll show like just whatever crazy stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff in this show. But at no point does it feel flippant. At no point does it feel apathetic to what you said. It feels like there's a lot of people working on this thing that care about it deeply, and not just a lot of people, but a lot of exceptionally talented people. So yeah, we spoiled only a few things too. We only talked about like 4 or 5 episodes, so there's plenty. Even if you haven't watched the show yet, and
Like
we
an
spoiled some
asshole.
things for you, yeah, like if you directly disobeyed us and we're an asshole, go check it out now.
Disobeyed.
But Cal, tell people. I don't know if you want to direct the people
I
anywhere.
think, yes,
but,
I will direct them to places.
Give the spotlight.
I
Take
think
the spotlight.
that the LTB Discord is a rousing place when it can be, or when it needs to be, or when it should be, and it needs more people. You can't fucking find me on Twitter. I mean, I'm on Twitter, but good fucking luck, you bastards. Also, maybe I'm a mod on a subreddit that I've abandoned and left to the wolves. But the LTB Discord, hopefully there's some kind of link to this in all forms of this thing. Come, I'll be there. I will give a take that will probably seem more incendiary through text than it would if I spoke it. But that's the fun, right? Also, I mean, there seems to be a lot of shit going on with our queer community. Let's not let them die the best we can. So that's all I've got, Zach.
Yeah, no, I think honestly that's a good note to send things off on. Everyone check out Let's Talk Broncos on YouTube. But yeah, there's some bad things happening in the world. It's something we don't, I think, talk about enough on the podcast, if I'm being honest. It's hard to shoehorn into a Broncos show, but no, if you now that it's brought up, I think it's fair. Donate to the Human Rights Campaign. They do good work.
The Trevor Foundation or the Trevor Project. Foundation. I forget what that's called exactly, but all of these things.
If you don't want to march or picket, though, that's all obviously very helpful. Even if you don't want to do that, there's always ways you can help and support our fellow man.
I'm very active, or I can be very active in the LTB Discord, and if you feel like you need that kind of space where you've got fucking allies and champions, even I own weapons, but come hang out. I'll be very active. Please don't interpret some of my stuff as incendiary as possible, but it's primarily about the Broncos, the Denver Broncos, but and I assume most people who are listening to this were already fans from your other, like your secondary stories.
They would have had to be.
Come, my name is Cal Mantisapien. I will engage in all of your trivialities. I love it. I love being paid attention to, and I love paying attention to fun people. So,
yeah, hop in the Discord. Links will be below in whatever format you're listening to this to. Join the conversation and go watch Primal, everybody. Until Monday night. Yeah, enjoy some rum until Monday night.
Oh, Zach, I don't know if this is going to happen again, but if it does happen again, I'm going to get you on Green Night.
Let's do it.
Let's.
Green Night. We'll do a Green. I need to rewatch that one because that one was.
I also need to rewatch it. I rewatched it recently. I don't know. We're extending it beyond the thing. I just wanted it doesn't have to be me next. If you want to do it again, I know there's lots of people who probably have lots of fun media takes, but eventually, and it's not going anywhere. Green Night. We can get and watch Green Night.
Yeah, that I'll sign up like that. If this is at all successful, if people enjoy this at all, and even if they don't, you and I can just talk about it. But if people enjoy this, we will. Here's your movie club, media club recommendation for the next time we talk about. We'll be talking about The Green Knight. So there's your homework. Go check it out. It's a fun movie, really gorgeous. I'm going to be honest. I don't even understand the story that happened in it. Cal will have to break that down for me next time, but it's a gorgeous movie, very beautifully shot. So enjoy it. Check it out. And check out Primal. Until Monday, let's go Broncos.